Have you ever heard of the spiral of fear when it comes to watching the news? News stories are often negative and sensationalized to trigger strong emotions. Most often, fear. Think wildfires, shootings, robberies, disasters. It's constant. This creates a self-perpetuating cycle where the more fear we consume, the more anxious we feel, and the more that fear spreads into our everyday lives, whether or not there's actually something to fear. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to ignore real dangers and to ignore the news completely. You got to stay informed. And at least for me, I grew up in a place where we weren't even allowed to wear red or blue in school because of gang violence. I know the importance of having to keep your head on a swivel. That's besides the point. My point with this fear cycle is if you're not aware of it, if you're not aware of it being present, it can actually dictate how you live your life. You can end up living your life in fear because of it. So this brings me to a whole different concept that I want to share with you, which is called invidious comparison. Invidious comparison is when you compare yourself to others in a way that leaves you feeling behind or leaves you feeling worse. You basically feel a negative emotion because you have compared yourself to someone else. Invidious means causing discontent or envy. So just like the cycle of fear, if you're not aware you're doing this, it can lead you to constantly compare yourself to others on TV, to other coworkers, to other neighbors, without even realizing it. And if you're not aware that this is happening, it can shape your daily emotions. Even worse, it can impact your financial decisions in a negative way. As humans, we tend to compare ourselves to others. It is in our human nature. But what I want to help you do is draw attention to it. Because a lot of times, it's that comparison and not even realizing we're doing it that makes us feel behind when we actually aren't, whether that's financially or life in general. So in this video, I am going to show you proof you're not actually behind. There's no such thing as behind. I want to share 5 different concepts and ideas to help shift your perspective, and that might help you manage your emotions and take control of your mindset. For those new here, hello and welcome. My name is Lissa, and I'm a personal finance expert and a certified financial planner dedicated to helping more women of color build wealth. Now, for the trolls and haters who love to comment, let me be clear. This channel is not about you not having wealth. Anyone can have wealth, and I'm happy to teach you. What I want to do is uplift people who have historically been left behind. You don't have to understand why at this moment in time. I encourage you to learn more about it. But if you support the mission, then you are welcome here like everyone else. Moving along, fun fact for you all, I have a degree in communications and also a master's in communications. And my focus was on entertainment and media. So I've always been fascinated by the psychology behind mass media messages, and that's kind of what inspired this video. That's why I talked about the fear cycle, and we're going to talk a little bit more about comparing ourselves throughout the video. But of course, I am going to put a finance and money related twist on this topic because, as we all know, money is deeply connected to our perceptions of what success looks like. So let's jump into this list of 5 concepts that I want you to keep in mind that are going to help prove you're not actually behind. Number 1, conspicuous consumption. Conspicuous consumption is the act of buying goods or services with the goal to display wealth or social status, more so than buying goods and services purely for their utility. So the word conspicuous means trying to stand out and be clearly visible, while consumption in this context refers to our purchases, what we buy. So in terms of conspicuous consumption, think about designer clothing, luxury handbags, sports cars, and the list goes on. And of course, a big example is posting it all on social media for the world to see. It is status signaling or peacocking. I don't just want to walk into the room. I want you to notice my beautiful, fancy looking feathers as I walk in the room. It's kind of like what I'm doing with these eyelash extensions. But that's something we could talk about in another video. Now, while we tend to associate this practice of conspicuous consumption with wealthy people, because they can often afford more luxury goods than everyone else, it's actually something that all socioeconomic classes engage in. In fact, it's often the reason that some people in lower socioeconomic classes struggle to get ahead financially because they have less, but then they're trying to spend more just to keep up. According to a 2020 research study, both consumption and borrowing money increases when it is conspicuous, when others are able to see it. So people are more likely to borrow money if it's going to allow them to spend in a way that people can see. The unfortunate part is in this report, they say that it is the bottom third of income levels who take on more loans and borrow more money for this type of consumption. So think going into credit card debt to buy luxury goods. That's just one example. What happens is when other people engage in conspicuous consumption, it can potentially lead you to do the same if you don't notice what's happening, if you don't notice what it's making you feel, and if you don't notice how it's impacting your decisions. Because other people being conspicuous with their luxury goods can make you feel like you're behind, even if in real life you might not be. So here's why you need to do your best to look past it as best as you can. We all know that not everything that glitters is gold. I actually know a bunch of former colleagues in the tech world who struggle with their finances despite making six figures. And obviously it's not because their salary is low, but it's because their expenses are high relative to their income. So not everyone who does conspicuous consumption is living beyond their means, but a lot of them are. The thing you need to know is that this happens at all income levels. Luxury does not always mean wealth. You might see people with expensive cars, designer clothes, lavish vacations, and some of them probably can afford it, but others probably can't. And for those others, you don't know because you can't see their credit card debt, you can't see the loans they have, you can't see what financial stress they go through. So as with everything we're going to talk about in this video, the awareness is key. Just awareness that this is happening is going to go a long way and help you make smarter financial decisions in your own life that are not going to be influenced by others. You're not going to get one-upped by someone and then try to one-up them by spending a ton of money, because what's most important is your financial goals. All right, let's move on to number 2, another reason or concept that shows you're not actually behind is people lie. The New York Post published an article in 2023 that reported findings of a poll on financial fibs. So the article says 71% of people tell a lie about something finance related up to 4 times a month, with 73% of people admitting that they have increasingly lied about money over the last 2 years. Now, some of those lies are to downplay what people have or what people spend. Sometimes people want to exaggerate what they have, and then other times people want to downplay what they have. Either way, there are lies that are being told, big and small. So something you want to remember is at the end of the day, unless you have full insight into someone's financial accounts, their investments, their debts, their assets, their everything, you just can't really assume you know their net worth or how much wealth they have or don't have. And most importantly, because of that, you can't compare yourselves to them. So going back to what I mentioned earlier about status signaling, when someone might look like they have the capacity to spend more than you because they're more flashier than you, they have nicer things than you simply just don't know if they have debt or not, or if they can actually afford their lifestyle. I'm not saying it's one or the other. I'm just saying it's that we don't know for sure. One practical place to be mindful of this is obviously on the internet. It is flooded with videos of people talking about, I made $1 million in a year and here's how you can do it too. I'm not denying that it's possible and that some people who claim that have actually done it, but I'm simply pointing out that some people do lie, and knowing that, remembering that, being aware of that will help keep us from feeling behind. Now, one more thing on this. Sometimes people aren't technically lying, but you're probably all familiar with the Instagram effect. It's how social media fuels this curated, hyper-visual form of lifestyle comparison. And without trying, it can often make us feel like everyone is living a better life than us. For example, if you see your friends or if you see influencers traveling the world all the time, that might be true. They might actually be traveling. But can it be exaggerated? Sometimes. What you want to do is protect yourself from potentially negative comparisons, especially when it's from strangers you don't know in real life. If you're aware that some people can lie, hopefully this protects you from that invidious comparison that we tend to do. All right, number 3, another reason to prove you're not actually behind is small sample sizes and survivorship bias. So with the rise of success stories on social media, especially with influencers, it's easy to feel like everyone is doing better than you, and even worse, everyone younger than you is doing better than you. I'm not saying this is always the case. I'm just saying sometimes if you see an influencer in their teenage years or maybe in their 20s and they're making millions of dollars, or it seems like they are, it can sometimes make you question where you stand. A lot of us do it. We use age as a benchmark for success, and we feel behind or ahead other people based on where we're at relative to our age. But the reality is, and I have to actually remind myself this constantly too, is we have different starting points, we all have different obstacles, and we all have different paths. There is no one right path and no one dollar amount figure that you should have at every given age. It differs from person to person. So there really is no such thing as what's ahead and behind. All that said, of course, I will always acknowledge that we're human. Comparison is natural. But my goal in this video isn't to tell you to stop comparing entirely, because that might be unrealistic. I think a lot of it happens subconsciously or unconsciously. I just want you to bring awareness to it. If we can recognize this tendency, we can avoid unnecessary negative feelings that could affect our financial decisions. Now I want to quickly talk about survivorship bias. Let's go back to talking about those young influencers. When we see success everywhere like this, it feels like the stories are so common, that everyone's doing it and it's like everybody but you. But the reality is, it's not that common. Specific people stand out because they are rare. If becoming a millionaire at age 19 was the norm, then it wouldn't be remarkable and it wouldn't go viral and it wouldn't catch our attention. So often there is a phenomenon called survivorship bias. We only see the people who make it, and we're not even worried about the ones who don't. So it seems like everyone is overly successful when we're not looking at everyone else. According to a report from NeoReach, only 15.1% of 2,000 surveyed creators made over 6 figures a year. Meanwhile, 70% of them earned less than $50,000, and nearly a half of those surveyed said that they made less than $15,000 a year. So again, when we see people achieving massive success, remember that that is a small sample size. We are not seeing the whole picture, and we might have this bias as we're looking at it. Now, sidebar, I'm not saying that you shouldn't consider being a creator. After all, I love content creation. I'm just saying that when it comes to feeling behind, especially if you find yourself comparing yourself to younger people, just remember that what we see online is a small, highly visible sample size and not always the full reality. All right, we got 3 down. I have 2 more concepts on this list that I want to talk through in this video. But first, if you are enjoying this video or taking anything out of it, learning anything new, please subscribe and hit the like button, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. I appreciate all of you on this YouTube journey, and I will keep doing my best to help you all build meaningful wealth. All right. Another reason I believe you are not actually behind in life is unlimited metrics. There are an unlimited number of metrics and measures that we can use to define a happy and successful and fulfilling life. So when people talk about being behind, or when people feel behind, it's often referring to financial metrics, so related to net worth, to income, to assets, to money. But what I want to point out here is money is simply one metric. It is one measure of success. And even then, if you can't separate yourself from viewing money as a means of success, then what you need to know is that there's no universal benchmark for how much you're supposed to have. Like I said earlier, we all start from different places, different starting lines. We all have different obstacles. We all have different end goals. So success literally is not a single number. I feel very strongly that success is multidimensional. So I have a question for you. If I told you that one person has $1 million, but they are miserable, they hate everything, they hate life, they hate people, they hate whatever, they just don't like anything. And then another person has $50,000, but they wake up happy every day. Who would you consider to be ahead? Who's really ahead? That's a trick question. There's no one right answer, because the answer that you come up with depends entirely on what you think success is defined as. What I want to do in this video and in this bullet point is just to help bring awareness to the fact that success literally is not just money. There are so many ways to measure success in life. So this whole feeling behind and feeling ahead of people, it's just, for what? So here are some other ways that you could measure, if you really want to measure, what a good, successful life is. You can measure it by looking at health and well-being. You can measure it through relationships and social connections, through personal growth and fulfillment, through freedom. Do you have autonomy? Through impact, and simply through joy. How much do you enjoy life? And for all of these different measures, these different metrics, how do you even quantify it, right? Everyone watching this, all of you, you all have different priorities, and your priorities are going to change over time. So I know I'm getting a little philosophical here, but my point is comparing yourself to others is rarely, if ever, helpful. If comparing yourself to others genuinely motivates you to take actions and improve your finances because you want to beat that person or whatever, then okay, find your motivation wherever you want to. I'm not going to stop you. I just feel like for most people, comparison leads to self-doubt, to frustration, and this constant feeling of feeling behind for no real reason. I think that energy is better spent focusing on your version of success and what you believe success is. All right, almost at the end of the video. Last concept on this list that I want to talk about that proves you're not actually behind is called the Hedonic Treadmill. So one big reason you might feel behind financially, even when you're doing fine, is the hedonic treadmill. It's also called hedonic adaptation. This concept explains why no matter how much progress we all make in life, we quickly return to a baseline level of satisfaction and crave more. So we have this lofty goal, we achieve it, and we don't even really get to enjoy it because we immediately already want the next thing. Think about when you get a raise or buy a nicer car or move into a bigger home. I'm sure it feels great for a while, but soon that upgrade you just made in your life becomes your new normal. And then you start wanting the next level up. So it is a constant cycle of adapting to higher levels of income and constantly wanting more and more in your lifestyle to the point that you feel like you never have enough. So let's be clear. I personally believe it is okay to want the next goal in life, to want more. But I think it's purely a balance. I think we underestimate the value of being content. All of our lives, we are convinced that more is better. And yeah, while more can often be nicer and can help improve your quality of life, what better is ends up being subjective, at least at some point. There becomes an amount of wealth that you have that it doesn't really make your life very different than it already is. The thing is, if you are never satisfied and you are constantly chasing something new, is that really better than someone who's just happy and content with life? It's a little ironic and hypocritical for me to be saying all this, I'll admit that, because technically, Wealth for Women of Color, I'm here helping people build wealth. And building wealth is technically to have more. But what I'm also telling you is that you should start building out your own definition of what enough is. What does enough look like for you? Otherwise, you're always going to be chasing something. And as you keep getting more and more of what you're chasing, you're never going to truly appreciate it, and you're never going to feel content. You're always going to feel behind, and you're always going to want more and more and more. And it's never going to scratch that itch. It's never going to satisfy you. Now, before I wrap up the video, I want to give you a few reminders as you progress in your financial journey. I think remembering these things will help you in not just your financial journey, but your overall journey in life. So, as you continue to progress and you continue to find success, I want you to remember, number one, your past self would be impressed and would be proud of where you are now. Don't ever forget that. Number two, the progress you make is just as important as the end goal. Kobe Bryant once said that the mindset isn't about seeking a result. It's more about the process of getting to that result. So as you have these lofty goals, it's really not about the end goal itself. The growth actually happens during the journey. The journey is where you're going to find your daily wins, your daily successes, and it's going to be filled with ups and downs, but that's where you actually grow. And finally, number three, another reminder for you is that wealth isn't just about money. I mentioned it earlier when I got philosophical on you guys in the video, but there are so many ways to define and measure success. You just have to choose what works for you. And when you have a good grasp of what success looks like and feels like, you'll be able to recognize it when you achieve it and when you have it. You'll feel good and you'll have peace of mind. I promise you, even though we do all want more wealth for a better quality of life, if you are chasing more money constantly your entire life and your entire existence is just circled around that one goal, then you're never going to get that peace of mind. And you're always just going to want more. So as for that hedonic treadmill, remember this. If you have enough to cover your needs, you have enough to invest for the future, you have enough to enjoy life, you are already winning. Don't forget to practice gratitude. And if you ever feel behind, remember that it might just be because you've raised your expectations, not because you're failing, not because you're actually behind. It's because you're making constant progress. I hope this video was helpful. Until next time, peace out.